I grew up in a place where the mornings smelled of fresh hay, and the evenings echoed with the low hum of crickets. My family's farm wasn't huge compared to the big industrial ones, but it was alive with character, warmth, and noise. Every sunrise, I would walk down the gravel path toward the barn, the cool dew soaking my boots, and I would be greeted by the chorus of our animals. Chickens clucked impatiently for feed, cows mooed with heavy voices, and the goats made their sharp little cries, like stubborn children demanding breakfast. When you live on a farm, animals aren't just background scenery. They are personalities, moods, friends, and sometimes enemies. And this story is about two creatures on our farm who couldn't have been more different, yet somehow managed to create a bond that taught me more about friendship than most humans ever could. The beginning. It all started one autumn when I was about 16. My father had just brought home a young calf. She was small and skinny, with big dark eyes that looked almost too large for her delicate face. I named her Daisy. She was shy at first, always hiding behind the older cows, but she had this gentleness that drew me in. Around the same time, one of our neighbors asked us to temporarily take in a stray dog. He wasn't a cute, fluffy puppy. No, this dog looked rough. His fur was a patchy mix of brown and black, his ribs poked out from under his skin, and one ear stood up while the other drooped down. We called him Rusty. Rusty had the kind of energy that made the chickens scatter and the goats climb up on top of anything they could find. He barked at everything, the wind, the shadows, even the tractor when my father turned it on. To be honest, none of us thought Rusty would last long on the farm, but he had nowhere else to go, and my mom, who had a soft spot for strays, insisted we keep him until someone wanted him. I wanted to believe her. Still, I didn't see how this wild dog and that gentle calf could ever share the same space without disaster. A rough start. Daisy and Rusty couldn't have been more different. Daisy was calm, quiet, and hesitant. Rusty was chaos wrapped in fur. And from the very first day, they clashed. The first time Rusty saw Daisy, he darted straight toward her, barking so loudly that I thought she would faint. Daisy bolted, nearly knocking over a feed bucket, and pressed herself into the farthest corner of the barn. "Rusty, stop it!" I yelled, pulling him back by the scruff of his neck. His tail wagged furiously, but his eyes still gleamed with excitement. For the next week, it was like that every day. Rusty would bark, Daisy would panic, and I would have to separate them. My dad muttered under his breath that keeping the dog was a mistake. He'll stress out the animals, and then what? Milk production drops, meat won't be good. That mutt is trouble. But my mom, stubborn as ever, said, "Give him a chance. He just doesn't know what home feels like yet." I wanted to believe her. Still, I didn't see how this wild dog and that gentle calf could ever share the same space without disaster. The unexpected shift. One evening, about 2 weeks later, I was walking back to the barn to check on the animals. The sky was painted in deep shades of orange and pink, and the air was cool. As I approached, I noticed it was unusually quiet. No barking, no frightened cries, just silence. I peeked inside and froze. Rusty was lying down in the straw, his body curled in a tight circle, and right beside him, almost pressed against his side, was Daisy. She wasn't shaking or hiding. She was calm. Her head rested near his back, and his tail thumped slowly, as if he knew I was watching. I didn't say a word. I just stood there, stunned. For 2 weeks they had been enemies, and now here they were, like old friends sharing a secret. From that day on, something changed. Rusty stopped barking at Daisy. Instead, he followed her around like a shadow. If she went to the pasture, he trotted beside her. If she lowered her head to drink, he sat patiently nearby, watching over her. It was as if he had chosen her as his person, except she wasn't a person, she was a calf. And Daisy, for her part, seemed to accept him. She was calmer when he was around. She no longer flinched at sudden noises. If another animal came too close and made her uncomfortable, Rusty would step in, not aggressively, but firmly, standing between Daisy and the intruder. Trouble on the farm. Of course, life on a farm isn't all sunshine and peaceful sunsets. A few months later, trouble came in the form of a wild coyote. One night, long after we had gone to bed, I woke up to the frantic sound of barking. It wasn't Rusty's usual "look at me" bark. This was sharper, urgent. I jumped out of bed, grabbed a flashlight, and ran toward the pasture. The beam of my light cut through the darkness just in time to catch a flash of movement near the fence line. A coyote, thin, quick, and hungry, was circling the pasture where the calves were kept. And right in front of the fence stood Rusty, teeth bared, barking with everything he had. The coyote lunged forward and Rusty charged. They collided in a blur of fur and growls. My heart slammed against my ribs as I shouted for my dad, who came running with the rifle. The coyote, startled by the noise and the fight, eventually darted back into the woods. Rusty stood there panting, a small cut above his eye but otherwise unharmed. Daisy let out a low, trembling moo, and when I opened the gate to check on her, she immediately pressed her head against Rusty's side. From that night on, there was no denying it. They were inseparable. Rusty had protected her, and Daisy had trusted him completely. The lesson. Years passed and Daisy grew from a fragile calf into a strong, beautiful cow. Rusty grew older too, his muzzle turning gray, his pace slowing, but their bond never faded. Wherever Daisy went, Rusty was there. On hot summer days, they rested under the same tree. In winter, they huddled in the barn, their breath clouding in the cold air. I often sat on the fence and watched them, wondering how two such different creatures had found each other. A dog and a cow, one restless and loud, the other quiet and gentle. If you had asked me when Rusty first arrived, I would have sworn they could never get along, but life surprised me. One afternoon, as I leaned against the fence, my mom came up beside me. She watched them for a while and then said softly, "See, sometimes the best friendships are the ones no one expects. They fill the empty spaces in each other." And she was right. Rusty gave Daisy courage. Daisy gave Rusty peace. Together, they showed me that friendship isn't about being the same. It's about being there for each other, especially when the world feels uncertain. The above. Eventually, time caught up with Rusty. He lived a good long life for a farm dog, but one spring morning, he didn't get up from his bed in the straw. Daisy stood over him for hours, nudging him gently with her nose as if waiting for him to wake up. I buried him under the old oak tree by the pasture, the place where he and Daisy had often rested side by side. That evening, Daisy stood by the fence closest to his grave, her big, dark eyes staring quietly in that direction. It broke my heart, but at the same time, it filled me with gratitude, because not everyone gets to witness such pure friendship in their lifetime. Even now, years later, whenever I see Daisy in the field, I remember Rusty. I remember how unlikely it seemed at first, how chaotic their beginning was, and how strong their bond became. And I carry that lesson with me always. True friendship doesn't ask for similarities. It asks for loyalty, trust, and the willingness to protect each other no matter the odds.
Thanks for watching. Don't miss the next story.